Back everyone to the second portion of the HTML5 tutorials. We're going to be covering what we call nesting today, essentially tags within tags, and covering essentially some basic elements that are needed. This will be about a 15 or 20-minute tutorial, so just make sure you have enough time to set aside to kind of cover these basic tags. Essentially, we're just going to be talking about nesting and reiterating over the close and opening tags for you. The other thing I want to get and mention, which you didn't mention in the previous tutorial, was how to actually write it before we even get it. I showed you how to, write it, but I didn't show you which programs to use to do that. So to get and just cover that real quick, I'm using Notepad++. It's a free open source Notepad. It's great for code editing. You don't have to pay a fee or anything like that, which is really nice. So you can get ahead and just Google search Notepad++ and download the latest version. It's actually a really good editor. But really, you can actually just use Notepad on your personal computer if you're on a PC or I can't remember the one on Mac now just because I'm not using a Mac at this point. But one of the more popular ones on Mac was Text Wrangler. So you may want to get ahead and download that if you're on a Mac itself. But really, any document, as long as it creates static text where there's no special formatting, where it tries to do it like kind of like in a Word document, as long as you can save it any type of way into a .html or .htm file, you're good to go. So you open up Notepad. We'll go ahead and do that real quick. So open up Notepad, right? And let's say I just did, body. This is just to show you real quick what I'm talking about, right? So you can do File, Save As, and then what you do is you click All Files, and this is notepad.html, and you save it, and you can just open this setup. So we'll go ahead and send that to the desktop. Show the desktop. And you can see it opens up in the browser. Simple. Okay. Delete that. So I just want to get and show you guys that you can use any type of editor to create your document. So let's go ahead and just get into the basic things that we need to get ahead and cover real quick. So really just going to show you nesting and how some basic elements work. We're not going to get into how they work, but you're going to kind of see how they work anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But for right now, remember, we're going to declare a doc type. We'll select the title, and this is what we call nesting. So nesting is putting other tags within other tags to create more in-depth elements overall, right? So right now we have body. Right, we're going to cover paragraph. And what paragraph does is it creates new lines for your document. You can even use break line. We'll cover that in a minute. So we'll say this is the first line, right? So that's content. We save it. We see that it shows. Great. But now, let's say if I push enter, this is my second line. Save that. And what HTML did, because you didn't tell it that you wanted a new paragraph, is it put it right next to the first line. We don't want that. So what we need to go ahead and do, now remember I said we're going to be opening and closing tags. Paragraph is one of those tags that you don't necessarily need to close, but I personally like doing it. So do P for paragraph. Remember, open tag, content, close tag. Okay, so if we save that, now you have the first line and you have the second line. But the problem you run into is that a computer is like a baby, so you got to tell it every instruction. So even though I put a paragraph on that first line, and I do this is my third line, save it, as you can see, it loads up the this is my third line. So we want to get ahead and every time we do this, we have to declare that it is a paragraph. So you want to do that for every document. So the way we did it was the wrong way. Really, what you want to get ahead and do is kind of plan out what you're looking to accomplish, so you don't run into having to constantly re-edit things that you're currently doing, right? So you see we can fix it, and it's just because I know what I'm doing. But this is your first time editing with HTML. This will confuse you because you're like, well, why is it not going to the next line? I pushed enter in my web editor, but it didn't go through the browser itself. So you want to go ahead and kind of plan out what you're looking to accomplish, right? And this is where nesting comes into play. So if I want to do a paragraph, right? Paragraph. And then I want to go ahead and create a title for this paragraph. And this one, I want this to have like a big bold text, right? So this is, whoops, I want this to have big bold text. So I do H1, which is a header 1. It's the largest text that you can do in HTML. Remember, everything is an open closing tag. This is my big text. Okay. Paragraph. And then my next paragraph, remember, it's like kind of like writing a school report. You know, you're going to have your title, and then you're going to have your body, right? So we're going to do paragraph. Yay, I set up my paragraph correctly. Can't type today, guys. All right. Okay. Save that. See? So with the H1 tag, we'll get into this a little bit later, but it made my big bold text, and then I paragraphed it because I know I want to go to my next line, and we do that. Now, what if you don't want to create a new paragraph, but you want to go ahead and break line, right? So you want to go to a new line, but you don't necessarily want to start a new paragraph for the system. That's where that break line tag comes in, right? Save that. So what the break line tag did was it didn't create a new paragraph, but it did break my line. The reason that this is important, we'll go ahead and show you why, because when you can write a paragraph, sometimes what ends up happening is you may not want this text to go all the way to the end of the document, because HTML5, when it reads, it's actually going all the way to the end of the web browser. It's trying to reach the maximum width. Sometimes you don't want to do that. So with HTML specifically, we're not talking CSS or anything like that, you use the break line to break lines at a specific point. All right, so we'll go ahead and demonstrate that now. And this is usually because, let's say you have a long text, right? So we'll save that, refresh it. Right, let's go and add some more characters. Save. Let's see if that did it. Okay, great. That's exactly what I wanted to see. See how down here it created a horizontal bar because HTML5 just keeps going and going and going and going. So at some point you want to break this text. Now, like I said, there are tag elements that do not need to be closed. I personally like closing them because it lets you know an endpoint and a beginning point, or beginning point, endpoint, however you want to twist that. So we can do BR right here in this line, save it, refresh, and now you can see the horizontal bar is gone, and it did it here. But we want to get and demonstrate that your tag can have multiple breakpoints. This is why the closing tag is very important, because this allows you to see where exactly you created breakpoints in your code, right? So we're nesting all these tags in between the text. See what I did here? So I know when I'm searching, especially when I get into the more advanced sections here, I can tell, for example, if I wanted JavaScript to parse this data here, I can tell it to look for This is getting beyond it, but I'm just giving you an example of why it's important for the close tag, is to look for an open and close tag, and it will only display this content here if I was writing a script for it. Whereas if you only had the one break tag, it's a lot harder to determine where the end of that text was for it. So you can see the end tag is going to be really important. I stress it when coding, is you really want to get ahead and accomplish that. But you can see what we did is the break line tag broke your line. So it doesn't create that nasty, you know, horizontal line which makes your content unseeable in the browser and so forth. So that's going to be really important. Just going to delete all this junk we created. Okay. So as you saw, you can nest tags in between each other, as we've done here. So you have the paragraph, then we have the header, and then we have the close tags. Right. Some people like looking at it like this as well, so that they can kind of see that a specific element has ended. You can even indent to demonstrate that this is part of that tag and this is where it closes, and so forth. So it's going to be important for those types of things. But really what we wanted to cover was nesting as a whole and why it was important, and then the different tags and how they're going to function within the nesting area. So nesting is essentially exactly this. So not covering the doc type, but under HTML, this is the main one. And really, if we look at it, we can tab in the header. So the way the browser is looking at this is that it's, okay, HTML, great. All right, I'll have another tag in front of it. So I have HTML head. So if we do this in numbers, it'd be 0, 1, 2. So I am now 3 levels into the HTML tag for nesting. Right, so I'm going in from 1, 1, 1. So I'm going in constantly, going into the final tag before the HTML document says, oh, okay, I'm finished. The reason this is important to know is because this is how the browser will render content. It will go to this tag here. It'll say, okay, well, what's in this tag? All right, well, hey, I found a header. Let me go ahead and render the header content first. Oh, wait, look, there's more information under the header. Let me go ahead and go into title now and render that. Okay, I've reached the end of amount of elements, or the children, under that header. I can go ahead and stop processing the header and now go into my body tag. So now my body tag has information. So we can indent that, because that's the second level. So now we can look at body as 1. The reason for that is because header was 0. So header was the first element under HTML. So this would be 0, body would be 1, and then under body you have the paragraph. So it says, oh, hey, I got to process some paragraph content. And then from there it says, oh, there's some more information under the paragraph content, which is a header tag. Let me process that. I've reached the end of my header tag. I've reached the end of the paragraph, so I'm done processing that. Oh, look, I've reached the end of my body, and I'm done processing HTML content. That is exactly how the HTML language reads your document. This is important because when you're writing your content, especially when you're building out and trying to find different elements, the HTML5, especially let's say you run into an error where something's not loading, just remember that where it fails, or where the content stops loading, if it stops loading, that is where your element has gone wrong. Something was not parsed correctly in the HTML editor. A lot of times you really shouldn't run into those problems unless you've done something completely wrong. But it's important to know that it's essentially a top-down language. It's going to go through a steady flow of looking for, what's in what and how far does it need to go before rendering the next portion of the content. Okay. So once again, we covered nesting in this particular tutorial itself. Especially we covered how opening and closing tags will benefit you, and how you can use those within other texts as well. Like you saw, we use the break line tag to separate content. Remember that. Okay, so this is my break line big text, and you can see that rendered here in the browser. See, this is mine. The browser saw it as a break line and then put it as a big text. So that's going to be important for you. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask those questions below the video itself, or go ahead and visit devprocb.com for any additional information. Once again, this is Carlos from devprocb.com, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the tutorial so far. Bye.